Okay. Hi there. I hope good to see you back. I'm sorry for the long delay. Let me get my slides up and I'll show you what we're going to be doing. I hope this will be fairly crisp, though I have a good bit to talk through. Uh, you'll see, well, let me get the slides up and we'll talk. Okay. Sorry, this takes a minute. All right. So first of all, I really am sorry for the delay. Thank you for making time to hear this, see this recording. Just to orient you a little bit, you're going to have to be listening to me talk instead of being able to participate. If as you go, you get you get to points where you're really confused, take some notes and you can write me separately and we can either talk or I'll respond to you in email. But mainly just be prepared to listen to me instead of the variety of voices we go for in class. The main thing I want to do today is prepare you for your essay assignment for this week. Uh, you'll see how that'll become the focus. To get ready for that, we're going to think more about the structure of essays. You had that exercise to unscramble essays, and we're going to go over that and then talk a little bit more about what makes for a good introduction and a good conclusion. Uh, we'll also review our plan for the rest of the class. I had planned for us last Wednesday to perhaps talk about microaggression in Claudia Rankine's poems, but I'm going to defer that topic just so that we can focus better today only on your new assignment and think more about the overall structure of an essay. So we'll take up microaggression and Claudia Rankine's poems when we meet next. So let me just say, I'm going to insert this because it's been hanging over the nation. We do at least now have the election resolved. When we met last week, or tried to meet last Thursday, Trump was still holding out. He so far hasn't conceded, and he keeps talking about the election being rigged, but the courts don't believe him, and the states are certifying results, and it's clear that Biden's the president-elect. Biden's done a great job of just ignoring Trump and focusing on getting prepared to take office. And yesterday, the Trump administration formally began the transition process. And what that means is that they released the money to prepare for the transfer. They released the office that will have to sign contracts, like for non disclosure, or who's going to work for the government. And, you know, we may have heard the phrase a lot, peaceful transfer of power. That's supposed to be one of the hallmarks of a democracy. But Trump's done his best to disrupt that. But it looks like he's just not going to succeed. And with luck, we'll still avoid any what could have been violence over the issue. But it looks like now at least the election's proceeding. So that was just a little real world update before we move on to our topics. So let me tell you what your homework well, first of all, I should say, and I thought I had a slide here saying it, we're not going to meet Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So this lesson is the only class you need to worry about this week. I had hoped I could do this well before Thanksgiving so you could have done your essay before the holiday, but I missed that window because of the technical difficulties. But you'll see that we're going to, at the end, come back and talk about your essay assignment. You have two topics based on Ibram X. Kendi's work on how to be an anti-racist. And you just choose one. You don't write about both. You're going to, on this essay, I'm going to be wanting you to have an introduction, an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. You've done that before, but we're going to talk about what this involves for the kind of essay that you'll be writing. An introduction and a conclusion is 2 paragraphs. I want the body to have at least 2 or more. So you'll have a minimum of 4 paragraphs or more than that if you have more paragraphs in your body. And I want your essay to be due next Tuesday, the 1st of December. I'd like you to complete it by then. I'm sorry that I didn't get the assignment to you in time for you to do it easily before Thanksgiving, but some of you may be able to do that regardless. But use your whole window. If you can draft it before Thanksgiving, come back Sunday or Monday and rewrite it, reread it, and clean it up as best you can. I hope you noticed too in um, one of my messages, I said that you don't need to add any more to your sentence journal. So as of last Thursday was the last day. And so what you have at this point is what you have in your journal. So no more assignments going forward in the journal. So that tells you where we're headed before we start. So now here's my slide. I should have moved this up. So our class plan, we're going to meet the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, which will be December 2nd. That's our next class meeting. We have 3 more classes, the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th. I'm planning for you to do an in-class writing on the 2nd and the 9th. And what that means is that I will give you something that you can read on the spot. I'll give you a topic, and I want you to write an essay right then. And this is trying to simulate the way you would have to write if we were in a live classroom. So I'm going to be asking that you complete your essay by the end of the regular class time or very soon thereafter. It's meant to be something that you write in full on the spot. And we'll be doing 2 of those to finish the class off, okay? On the 16th, I'll be there for, we'll see how we do on the 2nd and 9th. It's possible we'll defer one of the writing assignments till the 16th. If we've done writing on the 2nd and the 9th, the 16th will just be to end the class, answer any questions you have, look at and wrap things up that way. Okay? But that's basically the schedule from here on out. All right, so now we want to talk about the structure of the essay. And we're going to do that looking at the little exercise I gave you that many of you completed last week. So hold on just a second. So this is actually, what I'm putting up now is actually something that you could have, that I should have shown you before I gave you that exercise, because it kind of frames what you were doing. But here's the point. We want to look at the structure, and we're going to look at what people call a 5-paragraph essay. And I'm going to give you I gave you a little puzzle to solve around that. So, simply stated, stories, things that are written, plays, movies have a beginning, middle, and an end. That goes back to Aristotle. But they need to start, they need to develop, they need to end. So you've probably at some point been taught about the structure of a paragraph. And we sort of get this just from writing and reading and writing too. But paragraphs typically have a topic sentence, what states their idea, or at least a classic paragraph. It would have supporting statements to develop the idea, and then a concluding sentence. So here's a simple example to try to help you see that. Okay, high school students hate history. When they list their least favorite subjects, I'm sorry, my screen's covered here. When they list their favorite subjects, history invariably comes last. Students consider history the most irrelevant of 21 subjects commonly taught in high school. Boring is the adjective they apply to it. When students can, they avoid it, even though most students get higher grades in history than in math, science, or English. Even when they are forced to take classes in history, they repress what they learn. So every year, another study decries what our 17-year-olds don't know. All right, so there's a basic paragraph. And here, excuse me. There we go. So here's the the topic sentence here is high school students hate history. And then we get 2 or 3 sentences developing that. When they list their favorite subjects, students consider history irrelevant, boring. They avoid taking it. And then this is kind of a conclusion. Even when they are forced to take history, they repress what they learn, even when they take classes. So every year, studies come out saying people know less and less about history. So that's sort of a beginning, a middle, and an end in a paragraph. So with an essay, we have a similar thing, except we call it the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. And so you might just think of it this way. The topic sentence and the introduction are parallel. The body of supporting statements is like the body of paragraphs in the middle of your essay. And the conclusions serve the same purpose, all right? So people, you may have had this concept before, but there's a notion of a 5-paragraph essay, just because this is a good mental model for how to write about and develop an idea. The introduction is 1 paragraph. You state an idea that you develop with 3 supporting paragraphs, and then you have a conclusion, okay? That's a basic 5-paragraph essay. What's really important is that you understand each of those parts, because they work differently, and you have to know, now I'm writing an introduction, now I'm writing a body paragraph, now I'm writing a conclusion. And the good news there is that you probably already do know the difference. So it's not something that you aren't aware of already. So I'm going to stop sharing just a second. Okay, I wanted to verify I was recording, and I am. Okay, so we'll go back to screen share. Hold on just a second. We're going to go back to screen share and look at let me see if I can get them into the share. Hold on. Yeah, I think I'm sharing them now. I wish that you were on the line so you could verify you're seeing them, but it says I'm screen sharing. So most of you, several of you did these. Some of you skipped it, but let's go through the couple of examples. Remember in class last time, I put up this essay. Excuse me, let me get my windows a little bigger. About the ideal house pet. And we tried to look for what was the introduction, what was the conclusion, and what were the body paragraphs in the right order. And we wound up deciding that paragraph 4 was the introduction. And let's just look at that a second. A dog is a man's best friend. Notice this is called the ideal house pet. You read that first sentence, you'd think it was going to be about dogs. That common saying may contain some truth, but dogs are not the only animal friend whose companionship people enjoy. For many people, a cat is their best friend. Despite what dog lovers may believe, cats make excellent house pets as they are good companions, they're civilized members of the household, and they are easy to care for. All right, so we decided that was the introduction. We acknowledge too that the quote, "A dog is a man's best friend," is a good hook to bring you in to, Ismail, I think, acknowledged that it brings you in to, catches your attention. But it's actually not going to be about a dog. It's going to shift to cats, and it's going to talk about them being good companions, civilized members of the household, and easy to care for. So the paragraph 2 talks about them being good companions. In the first place, people enjoy the companionship of cats. So paragraph 2 became the first paragraph, or the number 2 here became the first paragraph of the body. The next one, in the second place, this is the second point, cats are civilized members of the household. That was the second point identified in the introduction. And then paragraph 5 says, lastly, and it's not the conclusion, it's actually the last paragraph of the body. Lastly, one of the most attractive features of the cat as a house pet are their ease of care. All right, they don't have to be walked, they don't need much space, and so on. So that left only paragraph 3, which kind of summarizes and repeats what went on there. So I hope that wasn't boring to restate that, but I wanted to just walk you through how we came up with those numbers. Because now we're going to look at this, and most of you who tried this got this right, but I want us to think a second about how we were able to identify the different parts, okay? And let's just read the first sentences. West Africa is the region closest to the Hollywood image. All right, so this is about West Africa. Even a superficial look at the major regions. This sounds like it's about more than one, as that would be the introduction or the conclusion. The northern regions, the southeastern grasslands. So 3 of these paragraphs are about different parts of Africa. And then we get to the bottom. When many people hear the word Africa, they picture streaming jungles and gorillas. Hollywood films have shrunk the public image of this immense, varied continent into a small segment of its actual diversity. This sounds like an introduction to me because it's talking about what we think about Africa and then what it's really like. To have a more accurate picture of the whole continent, however, one should remember there are roughly 3 Africas. 3 Africas, each with its distinct climate and terrain and with a style of life suited to environment. The continent can be divided into the northern desert areas, the southeastern grasslands, and the tropical jungles. So those are going to be the 3 topics. So now let's go ahead and say, the first paragraph is 5. The introduction is paragraph 5. So we want to go back and find where are the northern deserts. Let's see, the northern regions, number 3 starts out, have the environment and living patterns of the desert. It compares it to Egypt. So the first paragraph of the body is what was number 2 here. Then let's go back and look. Desert, southeastern grasslands. Well, here's southeastern grasslands. So paragraph 4 comes next. And then we come to West Africa as the region closest to the Hollywood image of mysterious jungles. As in the other 2 regions, the people subsist depend upon their environment. We're not going to read the whole thing, but that's the last one. So that just leaves this paragraph as the conclusion. All right, and we're going to look at these again in a little bit, so I'm not going to, I should just go, don't want to bore you to death, but we're going to come back to this and show why it's a good conclusion. Well, let me do it. I can do it now. Notice it just repeats. Even a superficial look at the major region of Africa shows it as a varied continent with several environments. Although most of the continent is tropical in its range or temperature, the climate ranges from deserts to rainforests. Similarly, human lifestyles vary from the simplest rural villages to industrial cities, both new and ancient. Contrary to the myth, however, jungle life makes up only a very small portion of the whole of Africa. So this it doesn't just repeat, but it hits the highlights and pulls things back together. And so that is our conclusion. All right. So actually, and I ask you to come up with titles. The original title here was The 3 Africas. Somebody actually said 3 Africas. And you might have gotten that because right here, it says, one should remember that there are roughly 3 Africas, and then we get those different ones. But this is showing the essay in its original pattern, so that we have the introduction, northern, southeastern, then the jungle regions, and then the conclusion at the end. All right. on this one, I'm not gonna step through here. Let's just go ahead and say the answers here were 4, 3, 5, 1, 2. Now, let's see, let's just look though. Let's just look if paragraph 4, the introduction, begins with this simple statement: I am a movie fanatic. That's its hook. When friends want to know what pictures won the Oscar in 1980 or played the police chief in Jaws, they ask me. My friends, though, have stopped asking if I want to go out to movies. I have decided that the idea of going to the movie theater to see a movie is overrated, so I quit going. We're going to see that's the main idea. The going to the movies is overrated. The problems in getting to the theater itself, and the behavior of some of the patrons are all reasons why I often wait for a movie to show up on TV. So now look here, this is the list of what we're going to see. The problems of getting to the theater. And look, first of all, getting to the theater prevents difficulties. So that's going to be the first paragraph of the body. The theater itself, there are problems just at the theater. Look at this sentence. Once you have made it to the box office and gotten your tickets, you are confronted with the problem of the theater itself. So that's going to be the second paragraph in the body. And then the last one is the behavior of some of the patrons. So when we come to the top, some of the patrons are even more of a problem than the theater itself. So now here we're decoding, we're deciphering, we're trying to find out what the right place is. But what I'm trying to get you to tune into when you write an introduction, you want to say what your main idea is. You want to give a hook, you want to say your main idea, and you want to prepare the reader for what's to come, like this sentence is doing. And what you say there, the order of which you say things there, is the order in which you would present it. So we're learning this by reading, but what we're trying to internalize is I need to connect the different parts of my essay. All right, so let's go. This is with this one in the right order. The name here happened to be The Hazards of Movie Going. I think somebody used The Problems of Movie Going, of going to the movies or something. It clearly caught on to the main idea. This should have been a clue. First of all, that should have told you that was likely a first paragraph in the body. But mainly here, the main thing that you can use the main thing that organized this essay was the list in this sentence and how that determined the organization of the whole body. Okay, so let's just stop there because we're going to look at these slightly differently in a minute. And let me put that away. All right, so like I said, most of you did well with that exercise that tried it, but that was trying to help you see a little bit more. Those were instructions for how to do it. Here are the key lessons. They're really, each of the parts of the essay are distinct. An introductory paragraph is different from a body in a paragraph in the body. And a concluding paragraph is different from an introduction or from a paragraph in the body. So you want to know how they differ, what's unique to each. And by learning how they differ, you can do each one of them well. And that's the main goal. So that's it for this exercise. Let me go back to that. That was just our unscrambling. So now, let's talk a little bit more about effective introductions and conclusions. And now I want you to think about this, because in the writing, you're going to write 3 more essays before the class is over. And in each one of them, I want you to not just think about how you develop the idea, but how do you introduce it and how do you conclude your paper to make it clear. And so now we're going to look at the introductions and conclusions to understand better how they work and why they're important. So what's their purpose? Why are they important? We're going to try to catch on to that by looking at some essays. So first of all, I want you to just think, independent of writing, about a first impression. And if we were in class, you would be thinking out loud about this, but you're going to have to just listen to me since we're having to record this lesson. Okay. But a first impression is what we think of somebody when we see them for the first time. Or it could be the first impression of a house. It could be the first impression of a food. It could be various things. But I'm thinking here, like, you might want to think about a job interview. What's the first impression is what people think when they first see you and meet you. And how do we make a good one? If we were going for a job interview, we probably want to be as neat as we can be. We probably want to be polite. We probably want to be courteous. There are various things that we would do. But the important thing is, why would it be important to make a first impression? And I think if you think about that to a moment to yourself, it would be pretty clear. We have just a few seconds to make a good impression. And when people meet us, they make a lot of judgments in a hurry. And if we make a poor impression, it's not easy to change that. And so you have to be you want to put your best foot forward, is the cliche. You want to be sure that you present yourself in a good way, because that is going to do it. And that's going to have a lot to do on the what people think about you after that. So what does this have to do with writing? I'm trying to get you to think about a first impression, because that's what your introduction does. It makes your first impression. And if you do it well, if you do an introduction well, you catch the reader's attention. They want to hear you get their attention, so they are tuned in to what you're trying to tell them. You also prepare them for what's to come. They have an idea of what's going to happen in the next few paragraphs, and that helps them understand it better. And you also win their confidence that you know what you are doing and have something to say. That's a very important thing to get the reader on your side. If you do it poorly, if you make a bad first impression, you miss the chance to get the reader to be on your side. You may leave the reader confused as to what's to follow, what the essay will be about, what you're going to take up. And you even put the reader on guard that things may get worse, that this isn't going to be an easy read. And so you want to set things up well so that it's clear and the reader knows where you're headed and the reader believes in you. That's what you're trying to do. So here's some elements of a good introduction. We've highlighted these a little bit, but we're going to look at them more. You catch the reader's attention. We call that the hook. Pull them in. You make sure you say what your main idea is. A cat is the ideal pet. That's what we call a thesis, okay? Movies, theaters are no longer enjoyable to me, worth going to. That was the thesis. There are too many problems. And then you tell the reader what's to come, and you could call that an overview. Another word for it's a blueprint. It's just a map of what's going to come in the essay. So here's one thing to think about for your hook. A lot of times it's a good idea just to open with a question. Questions have a way of pulling people into an essay. And so if you had said, what do you think? What is your favorite kind of pet? Or why do you think people prefer dogs over cats? Or Do cats have a fair reputation? There could be lots of questions like that that could pull people in. Another is to just use a quotation. That's what happened with dogs are man's best friend. That's a cliche. Turned out the essay is actually going to be about cats, but it was kind of a setup. Let's talk about dogs and then we'll switch to cats. But sometimes a quotation's just good because it puts the authority, it brings in an outside authority. Your essays that you're doing could lend themselves well to a quotation from Kendi or a quotation from somebody else on race matters. One of my colleagues has pointed out that sometimes it's just good to start with when, okay? That when can get you thinking about something relevant to your topic. When I first read Kendi, Ibrahim X. Kendi, I was skeptical about what he meant about anti-racism. Or when I first started to think, when I first realized the problems of racism, something would go. But when can just lead you in a good direction. So those are some possibilities. All right, let's talk about conclusions a minute. Why do we need them? Excuse me. Why do we need conclusions? Let me turn my phone off, or at least the ringer. Why do we need conclusions? We don't like going to a movie and leaving before it's over, right? Or watching a TV show, but not the end. We need that sense of an ending. We want to see how things come together. And it's the endings that often make any story memorable. It's the ending that we're trying to get to. So and here's a cliche about speaking. You may have heard this in speech classes, but it applies to writing too. With an introduction, you tell people what you're going to say. In the body, you say it. You've prepared them for it, then you say it. In the conclusion, you tell them what you said. Now this could seem awfully redundant, but it's saying, this is really important. If you want people to understand what you're saying, your ideas, prepare them for what's to come, then say it plainly, and then remind them of what you said. And that drives home your point very clearly. So here's what's at stake with the conclusion. If you do it well, you could say you cement the reader's understanding. You make sure the reader goes away understanding what you wanted the reader to understand. You also have the opportunity to deepen the reader's understanding, help them understand what you said in perhaps a slightly new way or with more to think about. If you do a conclusion poorly, you miss the opportunity to drive home your point. You just fail to make it memorable or to underscore what someone needs to remember. And you may also leave the reader confused as to why you wrote or why it was important. Because one good thing you can do in your conclusion is stress why this was worth thinking about. All right, so what good conclusions do? They summarize the main idea. They may just repeat the thesis. They may repeat other ideas. But a good one also offers some new insight. Maybe it says why this topic was important or what you've learned now that you've thought through this. Some new lesson that you can carry away now that you've put together the ideas in the essay. Here's the challenge of the conclusion. Because you're repeating, you don't want to just mechanically repeat. You want to find new words and you want to find new insights. That's the new insights come with saying, why was this important? What have we learned? What should be memorable? Okay. Some new way, a new way to say it and some new element that's part of what you get to. That's what makes for a very strong conclusion. All right. So we looked at this, let's see. Again, we're going to quickly look at this one because we've done it a couple of times, but I'm going to show you how there's a hook, a thesis, and a blueprint, and then we'll look at the introduction and think about how they overlap and how they differ. All right. So What's in red here is the hook. This is the main idea. Despite what dog lovers believe, cats make excellent house pets, okay? That's going to be the main idea. Cats make excellent house pets. And then here's the blueprint in green. Now let's jump to the conclusion. Cats are low maintenance, civilized companions. People have, and that's one of the main ideas. People who are one of the points. People who have small living quarters or less time to care for cats should appreciate these characteristics. However, many people who have plenty of space and time still opt to have a cat because they love the cat's personality. So it kind of restated the points in different order, framing them differently. And then, in many ways, cats are the ideal house pet. That's restating the thesis as the ending, okay? So these two paragraphs come at the same information, but with a different emphasis, and that's what you're trying to get to. Now, I'm going to give you copies of the essay, so even though you can't see this, if you care go back to read them, you can read them all in one place later. So I'm going to skip this one. We didn't take that one up in here. But let's look at the three Africas and think about it in the same way, okay? Here is the hook that what we've learned from Hollywood misleads us about Africa, okay? That's the hook. The thesis, the main idea, to have a more accurate picture, one should remember that there are roughly three Africas, each with its distinct climate and terrain. All right, so there are three of them. That's what's going to be the main idea here. And then we get the blueprint. The continent can be divided into the northern desert area, the southeastern grasslands, and the tropical jungles of the Southwest. Three different areas. So that prepares us. It's gotten our attention. It tells us the main idea. It's now prepared us for what's to come. Here's the conclusion to that essay. Wait, excuse me. Even a superficial look at the major regions of Africa shows that it is a varied continent with several environments. Although most of the continent is tropical in its range of temperatures, the climate ranges from deserts to rainforests. So it's talking about that variety in a different way. Similarly, human lifestyles vary from the simplest rural villages to industrial cities, both new and ancient. Contrary to myth, however, the jungle life makes up only a very small portion of the whole of Africa. Now, notice an interesting thing here. In the conclusion, there's no mention of northern, southeastern, and southwest. It avoids that language and just talks about the variety. So it presents it in a whole different way and talks about how the way people live differs. And then notice at the end, it then comes down to, what, it opens saying Hollywood had given us a fake impression. And it comes back to that in a way by saying, contrary to the myth, jungle life makes up only a very small portion of the whole of Africa. So it connects back to the beginning. And that's usually a good feeling in an essay when you just can it makes it show that it's coherent. It's all related. So that's a good job there. So just remember, your introduction wants to get you off on the right foot. You want to make a good impression, and you want to consciously create. And this is what I want you to be sure you try to do in this assignment. What's your hook? What's your main idea? And what's your blueprint? Be sure you include those. If you're writing about a poem or a story, or in this case, a book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, you also want to be sure you use the title and the author in your introduction. So you'd want to mention the name of the book. You would want to name Ibram X. Kendi. That's just a slight reminder, but sometimes people forget that. So for your conclusion, for an effective conclusion, you just want to restate what's most important and restate it in a way that's fresh. Try not to use identical words. Find a new insight or lesson. Connect back to the introduction or to your title. And you just want to make sure that your reader that you're satisfied. You leave the reader satisfied. Make sure you leave the reader satisfied you made your point well, okay? There's no confusion about what you're trying to say. Now, if we were in class together, I'd say, any questions? I would have said it a few times by now, but since I'm just recording this, I'll say if you have questions about any of this, you should send me an email and I'll try to clarify, or we can arrange to talk. But that's the basic idea there. So let me stop for just a second. And let's see what I need to do. All right. Okay. So let me come back. Let me start sharing again. We just need to go over our assignment now and we'll be done. So bear with me. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong place. Okay. All right. So now here's what, I could have just sent you this assignment, but I wanted to be able to show you that information about introductions and conclusions because I want you to be practicing that. And I also just wanted to be sure you understood this assignment. So you're going to have two topics and you just choose one. You're not writing about both, just one. Both of them require a response to one of Ibram X. Kendi's ideas. So your essay is going to be a response about, it's going to be about anti-racism and a response to something Kendi says. All right, here's your first topic. And I'm sorry, I got to move it a little because my screen's taking up. Okay. Let me try to make that big again and see if I can. Okay, Ibram X. Kendi posits that the opposite of racism isn't not racist. Posits means he states that as a fact. When you say you're not racist, that's not the opposite of racism. Rather, he says the opposite of racist is anti-racist. What does Kendi mean by that? And why is it important to be an anti-racist? So we're looking at, this is asking two questions. What does he mean that if the opposite of being a racist isn't not racist? And instead, the opposite of being a racist is an anti-racist. And why is that important? So here's what so I want you to write an essay when you explain what he means by not racist versus anti-racist. And let's pause here. Many of you wrote about that. That was a homework assignment. So if you've already thought about, I hope that homework assignment would prepare you for writing this longer essay. But regardless, you need to take up that idea. What does he mean by not racist versus anti-racist? Then explain why you believe it is important to be an anti-racist. His whole book is how to be an anti-racist. Why is that important? And I think it springs from this difference that it's not enough to just be not racist. But that's what I want you to explore. And I want you to support your explanation with evidence from Kendi. And by that, I mean examples, details, or quotations, and from your own experience or knowledge. Now, let me go slower here in that your main idea is what he means, your words for what he means by the difference between being not racist and being anti-racist. how you put that will be your main idea. This is what he means by that. Then you're going to demonstrate that with a paragraph or two from Kendi, where you use an example he used or his discussion points or something. And then from your own experience. So you want to look at it both. Here's what Kendi says about it, or what I learned from him. Here's how I know it's true from my own experience. And the part about your own experience may have to do simply with, excuse me, the screen flipped there. I'm sorry. You want to dedicate part of your body to Kendi's idea and part to your own. But it may be that for Kendi, you'll talk about what the not a racist versus anti-racist means, and then why to you is that important? That may be the part that is your experience. But I want you to just be sure that you look at these questions, both saying what you learned from Kendi and then saying from your own experience how you know how that makes sense to you. Okay? So let me leave it at that. That's the first one. And let me go one other point. I think you did both write about what it means to be an anti-racist. And you wrote about why it was important to stand up against racism. As one of you said, it's a very, almost silly to say, why is racism bad? But it's trying to get, why would it be important to be an anti-racist? That's what you have to get at. And we can presume a lot of things, but just unpack that in a very clear way, all right? One other thing, Kendi talks about this I know that it's been a while since you may have read this, but if you reread in the introduction from the middle of 17 through the bottom of 20, 17 to 20, I probably should have put that in the slide, it'll refresh your memory on a little bit about what he means about not a racist versus anti-racism. So in the very first chapter, 17 through 20, okay, that will help you a lot with that question. And I'm pointing that out because to write your essay, you don't need to pull a gigantic amount from Kendi. You just want to pull a clear amount and show you understand his idea. All right, let's go to the second question. And again, it's blocking my screen, so all right, here's the second question. Kendi says that being racist need not be a permanent identity like a tattoo. Instead, he says, the good news is that racist and anti-racist are not fixed identities. We can be racist one minute and anti-racist the next. What we say about race and what we do about race in each moment determines what, not who, we are. So before we read further, just think about that. He's saying that you can be you could be an anti-racist and at any point make a racist statement or have a racist behavior. It's not fixed. Equally, you could have been a lifelong racist, white supremacist, who realizes, no, I'm going to become an anti-racist. And so you're not stuck in one of those. And even if you are one or the other, you may have moments where that's not true. Okay. And let's read on. Write an essay explaining what Kendi means by racist and anti-racist not being fixed identities. Support your explanation with evidence from Kendi's experience. He tells stories about himself where he believes he behaved and or spoke as a racist, and from your own experience. All right. Now here, think about how Kendi, like even when he talks about his Martin Luther King speech, he realized that he did in high school, he realized years later that he was actually dealing in a bunch of racial stereotypes that Black people didn't work hard enough, or that they were lazy, or that they were too prone to get pregnant. Or child pregnancy. He wound up, but throughout the book, he interrogates his own behavior. He talks about he became racist against white people, blamed things on, had ideas of certain behaviors being attributed to people because they were white. And so he's very critical of himself. But here, I think the important thing you want to consider is the fact that he says you can't change. So what are some of the ways that he showed himself being a racist? In your own experience, how do you know that you've been both an anti-racist and may have exhibited racist? You don't have to do both, but just show how this isn't fixed. All right. So, excuse me. For this one, it may be helpful to look in chapter 2 around the definitions. That may help a good bit, but really I think you should be able to answer these, to write a good essay here, simply by thinking about any examples he gives of how he saw himself being racist, and anything you could see in yourself that showed how that changed. I'm sorry, I'm trying to look. I should have written down these page numbers. In the second chapter where he talks about definitions, yeah, they begin on page 17. On page 17 to the bottom of 20. I think maybe I said that, use those same page numbers earlier. Oh, wait, here's where he talks about fixed identities, is on page 10, right at the end of his introduction. He talks about fixed identities. And the not racist actually starts on around page 8. It's just at the very end of the introduction. You could find information for both of these topics, okay? All right. All right, so here's the rest of it on your essay assignment. Be sure your essay has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. The body needs to be at least 2 paragraphs. It can be more. You might think of that as being, first talk about Kendi, then talk about yourself. That might be, your first body of paragraph might be about him, the second body about you. You could have 2 or more paragraphs about him, 2 or more paragraphs about yourself. But you're going to end in a conclusion. But if you have an introduction, a body, an introduction and a conclusion, and at least 2 paragraphs, it means it's a minimum of 4 paragraphs in this essay. And I want you to complete it by Tuesday. I hope this doesn't interfere a whole lot in your holiday, but get started as soon as you can, revisit it after the holiday, and try to make it as good as you can. I want you to post your essay in your essays folder by Tuesday night, okay? That's what the assignment calls for. So now I'm going to stop. That's the entirety of what I wanted to go over. I hope those topics are clear to you. If you have questions, I first think you should go to the book and read the introduction again, especially the end of the introduction. Go to the first chapter on definitions. The introduction isn't numbered, and then there's chapter 1. Chapter 1's on definitions. Read from 17 to page 20, and that may help you too, okay? Or it will help you. Those are the critical places. And if you've done your homework, you should be just kind of revisiting these ideas and trying to shape them in a new way. So I'm going to stop there. I appreciate you listening. I'm sorry we had to do it this way, but I hope that you get what you need from this lesson. And to whatever degree you need more help, you'll let me know. I'm just going to close. I will just say a very happy holiday to you. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy your break. and can enjoy your break. And I look forward to seeing you Wednesday a week on December 2nd. Okay. All right. Take good care of yourself. Let me hear from you if you have any questions at all. Thank you. Bye-bye.